Okay, this is a 2007 Buick LaCrosse. Gonna be doing the lower intake manifold gasket. This is a 3800 motor. We're gonna take the upper manifold off and then the lower manifold off as well. We're gonna be replacing the thermostat, the coolant sensor, the temp sensor, I mean. And then also, more importantly, the other leak that this engine actually has is the timing cover is leaking as well. But I'm going to do them as two separate videos, two separate repairs, because they're not really, you know, involved with one another. So I'm just going to do them one at a time. This video will be for the intake manifold gasket. So, and you might want to be aware that there is the off chance if you're doing this job. Sometimes these manifolds will actually be so chewed through and deteriorated that the aluminum is pretty much no good. So sometimes you have to replace the manifold itself, the lower manifold. And I can explain more of that why once I get in there. It's easier to show. But what I would recommend doing is when you start this job, if you're going to start this job, make sure that there's a manifold replacement readily available. Because if not, when you tear it all apart, you might be fucked. It's actually a newer throttle body here. Okay, so we take the throttle body off, take the intake and throttle body off, and then disconnect this purge valve. It's for the evap. Disconnect your EGR valve. Basically, you're only disconnecting the EGR valve to give you room with the harness. That's the only reason. So you're not actually taking the EGR valve off. Disconnect that evap pipe by pressing in down here, and that piece will come up, and then you just pull it off. So once that's off, I'm gonna start disconnecting all these harnesses. Get my screwdriver. Yeah, pull up this gray tab. And then squeeze the black and pull it. Come off. And then on the injectors, you got this green tab. Pull up on it to unlock it, and then squeeze the gray, and it'll come right off like that. So I'm also going to undo the spark plug wires. Only the three that are going to the back cylinders, which are cylinders 6, 2, and 4 on your distributor. That's what they'll be marked as. Not distributor, your coil packs. It's not a distributor. Pull those through and just set them out of the way. Deal with that once we get back there. Pull these other injector clips up, the green ones, and then unplug them. Ah, damn. Can. There. Thing is stiff. Come around to the back. I'm actually not going to disconnect the fuel line here. I'm just going to take the whole fuel rail assembly up and out of the way. You don't have to disconnect the fuel line. I'm disconnecting the injectors back here is all I'm doing, and unclipping the harnesses from the fuel rail and stuff. All right, now you're gonna want to get an air gun first before you just take this injector rail out. Get an air gun. And then just blow all this debris out of the way. Alright, once you got that done, get your impact. There's a socket or whatever you got. 4 10mm nuts. 2 on the front, 2 on the back. You shouldn't be very tight. Okay, now the fuel rail is loose, and the way I'll take it off is I get a pry bar, and I'll come up underneath this right here on the motor mount, and then just pop it up, and it should come right out. Give it a little wiggle, there you go. Oh, one of the injector, a couple of the injector boots stayed in. Get those off. They just pull out, and then just put them back on. They'll clip on. You don't really want to grab these with a pair of pliers. Just try wiggle them with your hands. If you have to, you can use a pair of pliers, but try wiggling them out with your hands. Because if you break one, then you got to change an injector. And I may have to, oh man, I may have to use a pair of pliers. Let's try. Gently. Oh, got it. Go. Like I said, take the fuel rail and just set it out of the way. And now at this point, I'll take this little harness hold down bracket off and get it out of the way. Gotta come off regardless. Disconnect the map sensor. There we go. We got all this room now. At this point, we should start taking the alternator off. So I'm going to move the camera here in a second over here. I'm just going to disconnect the battery real quick. Okay. And I'm gonna move the camera. I might have to reset the camera here, see if I get a good view on this. Oh yeah, you got plenty of view. Okay, never mind. Take this coolant hose off, because we are going to remove the coolant jug. You don't have to, normally you don't have to. It does make this job a lot easier though. So just take that off there, and then there's two 10mm speed nuts that hold the reservoir on. I just pull the reservoir out. Still cooling everywhere. Okay, now that that's out of the way, start working on the back of the alternator. Should be a 10 and a 15. A 15 nut here, a 15 like a bolt stud looking thing. Let's see what we got. Grab my ratchet. Okay, 13mm on the back of the alternator. Take your battery wire off and just spin the nut back on so I don't lose it. Take this 15 off. Oh, I dropped it, but it's right there. Well, I don't know where it went. I'll get it in a minute though. Okay, grab your 10mm on this bracket back here. That'll allow you to pull this bar up, because you got to get this out of the way. This holds the alternator on. That way you can get to the nut that's underneath that bracket. It's also a 15, and then there's a bolt back behind it as well. Also 15. Now's going to be a good time to take the belt off, get it out of the way. Just trying to move everything out of the way here, get a good idea. Just take a 15mm socket on a ratchet or wrench, whatever you got. Pull your tensioner, pull your belt off. We're not replacing it, so get it up out of there. Try to prevent a bunch of fluids from going on it. Okay, and then we got the other 15mm, last one for the alternator right here. Oh shit. Oops, I forgot to unplug it. There. Alright. We got almost everything. We got the vacuum booster. I'd pull it off of the booster over here. Pull this hose off of the booster. Be very careful about where it goes into the back of the intake. That piece of plastic will snap right off, so be very, very careful about that. I still don't see that nut. Then you gotta take, at this point you can take the plenum off. So it's just a bunch of 8mm, and I think there's a couple 10mm as well. There's two 10mm nut studs, one here and then one over here right by the purge valve. Be aware there's a couple of longer ones. They go on the throttle body side. You can clearly see how long they are there. Just make sure you don't get them mixed up. Kind of impossible, but I suppose it could happen. At this point, the intake should be loose, the plenum. There you go. All right. Now, taking the lower manifold off isn't a whole lot. You know, there's not a whole lot more you have to do. You just got to take the belt tensioner off, disconnect the EGR, take the upper thermostat hose off, and then it's just, you know, bolted on. So there's nothing really incredible that you have to do with this job here. There's this bracket right here. You have to take that off. I remember that. So what we're gonna do is, we're not replacing the tensioner on this job either. The tensioner does have coolant that flows through it, and there's a couple of coolant elbows right here. This one's already upgraded to the aluminum ones. If your vehicle has the plastic elbows, you need to replace those as soon as possible. They will fail if you have plastic ones. If there's one thing Dorman did right, it was making those aluminum ones. So put the aluminum ones on, you'll never have a problem again. So. All right, I'm gonna take the belt tensioner off here real quick. I think there's 3 15mm that hold that sucker on, I want to say. And then it's just a little bit of wiggling to try to get them. There's O-rings on the coolant elbows. A couple of O-rings, so you gotta kind of work around them. And I want to say there's one more down there. Yeah. Damn, son. Usually I take this, I'm going to do it actually. Usually I take this pulley off. Just, I think it's reverse thread. No, it's not. It's not reverse thread. There you go, fellas. Man, maybe it is reverse thread. Oh, it is reverse thread. Okay. Okay, it is reverse thread. There you go. So I'll take that off, and then you can get access to the bolt just underneath it. We're still on tightening. Can you guys see? Okay, and then there's one more bolt for the tensioner. Actually, I'm gonna move this camera here. There's one more back here. out. And then that thing is loose. Yep. May have to pry on it. I'm going to do. Yeah, this vehicle has an aftermarket radiator in it that does not have a petcock on it, so coolant's gonna go everywhere. Nothing I can do about it. I got a bunch of, I got a pan down there ready to catch it all, and a bunch of pig mats, so that's all I can really do, you know. Okay, get there. Go ahead and take off the thermostat. Should have seen that coming. The thing about these 3800s is the thermostats are so easy to change. As soon as anybody has an issue with cooling, they're like, oh, it's the thermostat, because they're right here. And then they change the thermostat and their problems don't go away. I'm not saying that that's what this guy did. In there. Alright, I'm going to take that bracket off the back there. 213 mils. You do have to take this off. The intake won't fit past this, so you have to take it off. The one on the front though, this motor mount side, you don't have to take that side off. Okay, we get 13 here in this EGR tube, which I'm gonna use a wrench for that. So you're going to want to take this EGR pipe completely off. I've never had one of these nuts snap off, but if yours is, you know, excessively rusty, not to say that it can't happen. Pretty much always take that precaution with exhaust anything where you live, but that one was, there was nothing wrong with that one, so I just popped it off. And to get this bolt out, we're free sailing on the intake manifold. There we go. Bolt out. Take that pipe out. Now, here's the important part. These are not 10mm bolts. They're 3/8. If you put a 10mm on there, you can strip them out. Don't do that. Just use a 3/8. If I can find mine. There it is. This is a 3/8 socket. Fits way tighter, okay? I am going to get my sucker thing and suck all that oil out of there as well. All right, there we go. We got one down here. Two, three, 4, 5, and then a 6th one will be down in that oil. If you don't clean that oil out, there's a bolt down there. Okay, got 12 bolts. They're all the same length and everything. Careful picking them up so you don't drop them in the intake. Pretty sure someone's done this intake already. It's got RTV on some of the bolts. This car has 222,000, I believe, something like that. Yeah, this intake's definitely been done. And stop it from leaking. Okay, I got the lower intake off. Got the side gaskets off that are in 2 pieces apparently. Get our rear gasket off that's been clearly way over RTV'd. That sucker. Whoever did it didn't even run RTV along the sides, but they put that much RTV on it, but they ran none along this flat surface. What the hell? At this point, you get some. You have a shop vac or something, you can suck all that shit out. I have a shop vac, but it's at home. Kind of want to unplug this. Damn, I wish I had my shop vac. You don't have to unplug this, actually. There's no coolant passage that goes through the intake on this, but I'm going to get this fucking crud out. Alright, I'm going to show you how I set up the lower intake manifold gaskets. First thing you're going to want to do after you've cleaned everything up is put some RTV in each of these corners. You don't have to use a whole lot. And you can go along this with a small bead as well. That's how I do it. And then just take your finger and kind of, you know, rub that in. Same thing on this side. Just kind of rub it in. Just needs to be a thin layer. Not to be nothing crazy. Make sure you get a decent amount up in these corners. You want to make sure you get it up onto the cylinder head as well. You know, make sure you get that whole corner. You want like a little bit of a glob kind of in the corner. So when this gasket sits down on there, you got to take these gaskets. And they got two little alignment pins on them right there, and they're going to set down in here like this. And then they just lock on like that. Take this side, come on the inside, and then just kind of roll it up. That. Okay, once you do that, I'm going to take more RTV, put it on this corner, on each of these corners again. Make sure that whole gap is filled in. Because if it's going to leak anywhere, it's going to be on these corners typically. So just make sure there's a decent amount there. There you go. Now some people will probably tell you to go ahead and put RTV on all of that. Don't do that. You know, just don't do that. Don't fucking do that. Let the gasket do its job in these instances. And this particular job, put the gasket on there. Let the gasket do its job. Okay. Put these gaskets down now. Make sure you do it in this order. because you're going to apply RTV again for a third time. You basically, the first time you put RTV down, you're sealing between the blue gasket and the head and cylinder block. Then the second time, you're making sure it seals from gasket to gasket. The third time, you're making sure it seals from gasket to intake. So there's 3 seals there. So just put a little bit more. Now rub it in a little bit on this corner. These corners, there's more than one. Oh, I need a rag. Okay, now the gaskets are set. That's good. Double check them, make sure they're all right. They are. Now you're going to get the intake manifold. I would recommend changing that coolant temp sensor before you put the intake manifold back on. I've already done that. I did that on the bench while I was cleaning everything up. So you can see, got a new temp sensor in there. Gonna take this manifold. You got to kind of put the front side in first and then just kind of set it down evenly. There we go. She's on. I can see the gaskets are still there. The bolt holes are lined up. So get your bolts and start putting them in. Actually, at this point here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cover up these bolt holes. Let me get another rag. I'm going to run these bolts down with my 1/4" impact, and then I'm going to torque them. These do have different torques for the different 3800s. There's a few of them. God, I think some of them are like 22 foot-pounds, and some of them are 18, and some of them I think are like 11. So I'm not going to show the procedure of me torquing it because I'm just going to get this manifold placed and tight, and then I'm actually going to do the timing cover as a separate video. So I'm not going to show the torque procedure, but and one of the reasons is because I don't want to do the torque procedure and then, you know, you get the wrong torque specs from my video for your vehicle. Just make sure you look up your correct vehicle for your torque specs. Let's see. Cleaned up the bolts. Clean the bolts up a little bit. Not a whole lot, but Jesus, they got dried up coolant all stuffed in them. Some of these are going to want to kind of go in at an angle, at a funky angle. And what I'll do is I'll actually, I'll use my impact to start them. I'm not saying if you're not comfortable doing that, don't do it, because these do go into the cylinder head, and if you strip them out, well, you're shit out of luck on that hole. So I'm very confident with that, and that's how I've always done it. That's how I'm gonna do it. But like I said, sometimes these bolts are gonna want to kind of go in at a little bit of an angle. And that's just because the intake's not actually flat until it's tightened down. So sometimes the bolts have to kind of go in at a little bit of an angle. But obviously if they're at an angle, don't just fucking put your gun on them and pull the trigger. I use a gun, and I use an impact gun and a small extension on it for leverage to kind of wiggle it around and get them started, and I'll get them all started before I run them down. So these are all pretty well straight. So like that. There you go. That one's straight. These are all pretty well straight, actually. I got lucky here. Okay. Okay, and then like I said, at this point you can torque them down. I'm going to go ahead and shut the camera off and do that, and then I'm going to put a few things back together that I can that's not going to interfere with me doing the timing cover on this as well. So at this point, that's the end of the video. You know, all you have to do at this point is reverse of removal and just put everything back together, and it should, you know, shouldn't be a problem. So make sure you change oil, make sure you burp the coolant. Again, I'm not going to show those steps just because I'm doing other stuff on this vehicle as well. So okay, thanks for watching.